So what exactly is passion? When I've been asked this question in the past, I think I've often given the answers of doing something or a certain job that I think is my passion or certain activity. Sometimes we may think that it's this one thing that we've found, this one thing that we feel like we do for the rest of our life, and we find it and we say that's our passion. But actually, passion isn't the thing in itself, it's actually the feeling that we have towards something. So we can say that we're passionate for something, or we're passionate about art or music, and that's coming from an internal feeling to say that something is our passion, rather than to say if we are to find our passion, that's implying that it's external and that it's something we can find and pick up and say, oh, this is my passion. I've actually been looking for this and now I realize what it is. But when we say passion is internal, that makes sense because it resonates with who we are and what we like. It plays on us as an individual to say, this is something that's resonating with a part of who you are, rather than finding something and suddenly saying, oh, this is a part of me now. It's like you're bringing it into you. So it's actually something from the inside that's saying, you like this sort of thing, and it recognizes something that you see or hear as something that you may be passionate about or you may just get excited about. So when you get excited or interested about something that you engage in, you can ask yourself, what about that makes me feel this way? It could be a way of doing things or an activity that you perform that makes you feel really good about yourself and very fulfilled. And what you can do is you can take that part of your experience and add it to the many things that make you feel that way. And you can look back and say, these are the things that I've enjoyed and taken an interest in from different parts of my lifetime and experiences. And you might be able to construct that and find a good match for an activity or job that resonates with these feelings of passion and interest. When we think about pursuing passion, sometimes what we may do is separate these two different approaches, which is pursuing your passion versus going into a 9-to-5 traditional job. And I think it's good to be aware of the differences between these two approaches if you're considering pursuing either or, like one or the other. For traditional 9-to-5 jobs, we usually regard them as a very safe path that's secure and has a guaranteed salary that we sign up for. And if you do well in that job, you get a higher chance of being promoted, which gives you more guaranteed salary and also demands more time, responsibility, and effort to put into that role for the company that you work for. I think the biggest prompt for me when I was seriously considering pursuing something like passion projects like content creation, for example, was analyzing the approaches that you have to always be working and doing the act of working 40 hours a week, 5 days a week if you're on a full-time job. And if you stop that action, you stop earning money. There's nothing to really keep the cogs turning once you stop. So it's always continuously trading your time for money. And it's doing that in the hope that you eventually take on more responsibility, you put in more time and effort, and you generate more and more money to help meet your needs. And then in comparison to something like pursuing YouTube as a project for content creation, we are rewarded for effort in a very different way than we would be in a traditional job. Let's say for YouTube, for example, there is no guaranteed salary that you get as soon as you start the job at YouTube. And it's effectively, you are your own boss at YouTube. You're just using YouTube as a platform to display the content that you create. Rather than a guaranteed salary, you are rewarded based on a dynamic system. And this is reliant on views and subscriptions, just in general, the amount of engagement that you can bring to the platform of YouTube. And unlike a traditional job, you can't get away with just being mediocre if you're pursuing this as something full-time. You have to be exceptional because to earn enough money for a living, you need to work harder for YouTube. If you are pursuing YouTube as something that's full-time, you have to always be making content and you have to be exceptional at it to be able to earn a living that's comparable to full-time salary. You have to put an effort to find a formula that works for your channel and helps you to engage your audience. Then you essentially repeat that formula and continue to be rewarded dynamically based on how many people you can engage per video. And it is a double-edged sword for this approach because you can have immense earning potential because it's dynamic and it doesn't really have a limit to how much income you could have. But it also brings in the possibility that you put in a lot of effort for a video and it just flops. So no one engages in it, no one likes it, maybe people dislike it. That is probably the biggest element that plays into the risk versus reward between these two approaches. For a traditional job, you can be rewarded for just being mediocre at your job and you don't have to go super beyond the limits of what you're required to do. And with YouTube, there's a lot of importance on engagement and how many people you can bring in, and that's always going to remain variable. It's never a fixed amount you're guaranteed to earn per video. And with this approach, we should also be careful of entitlement, that you deserve a certain amount of engagement for the effort that you put in. And I also thought of this in comparison to a uni degree. A uni degree doesn't actually guarantee that you'll be able to get a job in the relevant area that you studied. It will guarantee that you'll be considered for the job because they may be looking for people with certain degrees, but ultimately you are the one who has to earn your way into a certain company to get the job, to go through the interview process like everyone else. When I'm working on passion projects in my spare time, I like to give them the full-time treatment approach in terms of importance. So that is to say, even though I may only be able to spend a few hours on this per day, I don't treat it as a side gig in terms of importance, because to me, I see the potential of what this could be if I put the time and effort into it and I treat it as something that could be cultivated, that I can grow that into something sustainable and eventually leave it behind as something that leaves the world in a better place. One of the biggest things that I'd like to improve upon with this approach is seeing the goal, but then also seeing the obstacles that come with it. Essentially, I know what I want to achieve, but then I see the mountain that I have to climb for that, and that deters me. So it's caused me to drop things in the past that I've engaged with for creativity, like music production and also digital art recently. So when I took inspiration and learned from other people, I would see the standard that they were putting out. And I was no longer someone who was happy with the quality of the work I was putting out. And essentially comparing myself to others, I knew that I needed to sign up to learn more knowledge to further my sound quality and get it to something that I'm happy with. But this essentially comes with anything that you engage in and learn. So if you want to output a quality standard, you'll have to put in the work to be able to achieve that. So if you are treating it seriously and it's something you want to invest more of your time into, you may have to realize and accept the fact that not all of the time that you spend on is going to make you happy. There are some times when you may just have to work it off and absorb knowledge to get to a standard that you want to. And that's something that just comes with anything that you're wanting to learn or pick up. When you're a total beginner, accept the level that you're at and be willing to learn and get to the level that you want to. So a little while ago, I was pursuing all of these things at once. So content creation, digital art. So my current approach for now is to focus on one thing at a time, because I would often want to do everything and capitalize on the timely effectiveness of each of those options. So I would have fear of missing out on opportunities in the digital art space to capitalize on trends. So a certain type of art is quite popular and I feel like I should be making art to fit that so I can capitalize on the trend. When I was also studying the UX design course from Google, I had ongoing subscription costs, so I always felt I had to constantly be doing it. And when I couldn't do it, I felt like I was wasting money. Having too many options to put my time into for passion projects actually caused me to undergo some analysis paralysis. So I'd often just go hop on my bed and play video games or watch YouTube instead. This thought of, I can't be like that, those people are extraordinary. It's essentially separating us from the people who have already succeeded and are very good at what they do. And in reflecting on this in the content creation space, as well as people like celebrities, like actors or artists, my perspective has actually changed to see them as just ordinary people. Because in reality, these famous and successful people didn't start off like that. And as these people get more fame and more success, what we often do is we drive a big wedge between us and them to say, we could never be like that because they're so good and look at us, we're not good. But in reality, pretty much anyone can be like that or have that success. But what does it even mean to be like that? And it's like we're idolizing them and treating them as some kind of ascended being. So I think a better, more healthier mindset to carry forward for this is to bring the perspective of them back down to earth. Essentially, we can remove the pedestal that we've created for them in society, so you can maintain a human perspective while also maintaining respect for them as an individual and the work they've done. And when I was watching an interview from Cillian Murphy on Peaky Blinders, I saw a comment that said some guy actually met Cillian Murphy at a pub and just had like a 2-hour conversation with him. And I think there's something so nice and human about that, that you can just talk to them like they're human beings and not some kind of idolized being that we create. I view this question as a permission question, like, am I allowed to do this? And there is no one-size-fits-all answer that I can give, because it depends. It depends on your situation and who you are and the obligations that you have, how much time that you have to dedicate. And this is for people considering the either or option. So to say, I have to either work in a traditional job 9 to 5 full time, or I have to pursue my passion full time. If you are looking at it this way, my general thoughts are to have a plan and know how you can pursue this in the most effective way possible. Take time to learn from others' success because they have many things to teach you. Make sure there's an opportunity for it, so analyze the market and see how it's doing and is there a way that you can fit in. Pay attention to problems that may frustrate you and ask yourself why. Do I have a desire to impact this in some way to help people? Do I see a more efficient way to do it? Does seeing people do or say this make me angry? How could I give some sort of solution to people who are struggling with this same problem? And if it is the either or option, I would say jump if you can afford to drown. Do you know if you're swimming towards something or just treading water with no real aim? And can you afford to survive based on what you currently have, while you dedicate yourself to pursuing this thing that may not come to fruition? And it's very important to acknowledge that if it is something like YouTube that isn't really a guarantee, is this something that you can afford to pursue at the moment? And that is something to consider with something like YouTube, for example. Is this something that you will be comfortable with not succeeding for a certain amount of time in your life? So maybe you can dedicate yourself some months or years to see how it goes when you apply yourself, and dedicate yourself in the most effective way possible to try to make it work. And most importantly, don't take any of my words here as gospel. So don't rely 100% on a stranger on the internet to decide what you should do with your life. Try not to feel like you need permission from someone else to pursue something like this. You should be able to look at your own life and do some introspection, pay attention to your situation and decide based on that. And maybe you can ask yourself a question like this for the green light. On my deathbed, would I regret not giving this an honest go? So just remember, it's not a one size fits all thing. It's not a one thing you have to do for the rest of your life. Pay attention to your feelings of what you've engaged in your past. What has made you really excited or fulfilled? These may not be limited to certain jobs. It could be social interactions or things that you did in school. Take the bits from your experiences and compile them and cultivate them into something that you can apply into the world. And if you've never done introspective stuff or reflected on your feelings and experiences, then you can be patient with yourself, but not so much that it inhibits your progress. So always keep progressing towards it and remember why you're wanting to do this in the first place.